My name is Jane Eyre. I was born in England. My parents died when I was very young. After that, I lived with my aunt, Mrs. Reed. She was my father's sister-in-law. I lived in her big house, called Gateshead Hall. My aunt had 3 children, Eliza, John, and Georgiana. They were rich and proud. They did not love me. They often laughed at me and said I was poor. I was not happy in that house. My aunt never smiled at me. She said I was bad and ungrateful. I tried to be good, but she did not care. I was lonely. I had no friends. When her children played, I had to sit alone. Sometimes I read books, but if John saw me reading, he hit me. He was cruel. He said I had no right to read his books. One day he threw a book at me. It hit my head, and I cried. When I tried to stop him, he shouted for his mother. Mrs. Reed came into the room. She did not ask what happened. She believed John's lies. She said I was a wicked girl. Then she sent me to the Red Room. The Red Room was a large, cold room. It had red curtains and a big bed. The room was dark and silent. My uncle had died in that room many years ago. People said his ghost sometimes came back. I was very afraid. I sat on the floor and cried. The light was low, and I thought I saw something move. I screamed and begged to be let out. The servants came, but Mrs. Reed said I must stay there as punishment. I felt weak and sick. Later, someone found me lying on the floor. I had fainted. When I woke up, I was in my bed. A kind doctor named Mr. Lloyd came to see me. He spoke to me gently. He asked if I was happy at Gateshead. I said no. He asked if I would like to go to school. I said yes. A few weeks later, Mrs. Reed told me that I would leave. She said I would go to Lowood School. I was glad, even though I was scared. On a cold morning, I left Gateshead. The road was long, and snow fell from the sky. When I reached Lowood, I saw a large gray building. It looked sad and cold, but I was ready to start a new life. At Lowood School, I met many girls. The school was poor. The rooms were cold, and the food was bad. We had to wake up very early. We washed in cold water and prayed before breakfast. Sometimes the bread was hard and the porridge burned. The teachers were strict. The headmaster was Mr. Brocklehurst. He was tall and thin. He said we must be humble and quiet. He said God did not like rich clothes or proud girls. One day, Mr. Brocklehurst came into the room while we were eating. He pointed at me and said, "This girl is a liar." I was shocked. He told all the students not to speak to me. I looked down. I felt very sad. I had never lied. I wanted to cry, but I stayed quiet. After he left, I sat alone. Then one girl came and smiled at me. Her name was Helen Burns. She was kind and calm. She said I should not worry about Mr. Brocklehurst. She said God loved me and knew the truth. Helen became my first real friend. She was gentle and wise. She always spoke softly and never became angry, even when teachers scolded her. She said we must be patient and good, even when life is hard. I admired her very much. She read many books and liked to think deeply. When other girls were punished, she did not complain. She said, "It is better to forgive." I tried to be more like her, but it was not easy. Days at Lowood were long and cold. We had little food and no fire in the rooms. In winter, our fingers turned red and hurt from the cold. Sometimes the water in our basins froze, and we could not wash. Many girls became sick, but the teachers did not care much. They only told us to pray and be thankful. Still, Helen always smiled. She said heaven would be a better place. Her words gave me strength when I felt tired and hungry. One spring, a sickness came to Lowood. Many girls became very ill. Some died. The air smelled bad, and we were afraid. Helen also became sick. She coughed often and looked pale. One night, I went quietly to her bed. She smiled when she saw me. I took her hand and asked if she would get better. She said, "No, Jane. I am going to heaven soon. Don't cry. You must not be afraid of death. God will take care of us." I cried and lay beside her. She held my hand until I fell asleep. In the morning, Helen was dead. My heart was broken. She was my only friend. I missed her every day. After that, many people came to Lowood to see the bad living conditions. They saw that the girls were cold and hungry. They gave money to make the school better. New teachers came, and the food became good. The rooms were warm, and we had more clothes. Life slowly changed. I studied hard and became one of the best students. After some years, I became a teacher at Lowood. I stayed there until I was 18. Still, I wanted something new. I wanted to see the world beyond the school. I wanted freedom and a different life. One day, I wrote an advertisement in a newspaper. I said I was a young teacher and wanted to work in a private family. A few weeks later, I got a letter. A lady named Mrs. Fairfax wrote to me. She said she needed a governess for a young girl at a place called Thornfield Hall. My heart filled with hope. I said yes. When the day came, I left Lowood. I felt both happy and sad. I was leaving the only home I had known for many years, but I wanted to start my own life. The journey was long. I traveled by coach for many hours. It was late when I reached Thornfield Hall. A kind woman opened the door. She was Mrs. Fairfax. She smiled and welcomed me warmly. She was old and kind, with a soft voice. She said I would teach a little girl named Adele. The next morning, I met Adele. She was a small, pretty girl with bright eyes and curly hair. She spoke French and a little English. She was cheerful but sometimes spoiled. I liked her, and she liked me too. Mrs. Fairfax said that her guardian was Mr. Rochester, the master of Thornfield. He often traveled and did not stay home much. I wondered what kind of man he was. The house was large and quiet, with many rooms and long corridors. Sometimes I thought I heard strange laughter from the top floor, but I said nothing. I was happy with my new work. The days were peaceful. I taught Adele and walked with her in the garden. Mrs. Fairfax told me stories about the house. She said Mr. Rochester was not married and had no family nearby. I listened and grew curious about him. One evening, I went for a walk near the road. The wind was cold and the sky was gray. Suddenly, I saw a man on a horse. The horse slipped on the ice and the man fell. I ran to help him. He looked at me sharply but said thank you. I did not know it then, but that man was Mr. Rochester. He looked about 35 years old, with dark hair and serious eyes. He spoke in a deep voice. He asked if I lived at Thornfield, and I said yes. He looked surprised and asked my name. When I told him, he only said, "Very well, good night," and rode away. Later that evening, when I returned to Thornfield, I saw him again, sitting by the fire. He was the master of the house. Before I continue rest of the story, please like, subscribe, share, and tell me where you are listening from. Your support means a lot to me. Now let's continue. After that night, I often saw Mr. Rochester. He spoke little, but when he spoke, his words were strong. He was not a handsome man, but his eyes were full of life. He asked me many questions about my childhood, about Lowood, and about my thoughts. He said I was different from other women. I did not know if he liked me or was only curious. Still, I liked talking to him. I felt free to speak my mind. Sometimes he looked sad, as if he carried a heavy secret. He laughed suddenly, then became quiet again. I could not understand him, but something in his voice always moved me. He said strange things, half kind, half mocking. When he smiled, his face changed. I began to wait for him every evening, wondering if he would come down to talk after dinner. One night, we sat near the fire. The room was warm, and Adele played with her doll. Mr. Rochester looked at me and said, "Do you think I am a good man, Miss Eyre?" I did not know what to say. I said softly, "You are kind to Adele, sir." He laughed, but it was a sad laugh. "Kind," he said. "Perhaps not always, but thank you." Then he looked into the fire and said nothing more. After that, he began to invite guests to Thornfield. Many rich ladies and gentlemen came. One of them was a beautiful woman named Blanche Ingram. She was tall, proud, and very elegant. Everyone said she would marry Mr. Rochester. She sang, she laughed, she looked at him with love. I tried not to care, but my heart hurt when I saw them together. I told myself, "He is not for you, Jane. You are poor and plain. Forget him." But it was hard. Mrs. Fairfax said, "Miss Ingram is a fine lady. Mr. Rochester seems very fond of her." I smiled and said nothing. At night, I sat in my room and cried quietly. I knew I loved him, but I had no right to hope. I was only a governess. One evening, while the guests were still at Thornfield, a strange man came to the house. He said his name was Mr. Mason. Mr. Rochester looked worried when he saw him. I could see that something troubled him deeply. Later that night, I heard a terrible cry from the top floor. It was a scream, loud and wild. Everyone woke up. The guests ran into the hall. Mr. Rochester came down quickly and said it was just a servant who had a bad dream. But I knew he was lying. He looked at me and said quietly, "Miss Eyre, come with me. Bring a cloth and water." I followed him upstairs. He opened a secret door behind a curtain. Inside, I saw Mr. Mason sitting in a chair, his arm bleeding badly. Mr. Rochester said, "Do not speak to him, Miss Eyre. Just help me." I washed the wound and tied it. Mr. Mason looked pale and afraid. Mr. Rochester said softly, "You must leave in the morning, Mason. Say nothing to anyone." When we left that dark room, I asked, "Who hurt him, sir?" He looked at me and said, "Ask me no questions, Jane. Forget what you saw." I wanted to know more, but I obeyed. That night I could not sleep. I thought about the scream and the secret door. Who was inside? Why did Mr. Rochester hide the truth? Days passed. The guests left the house. Thornfield became quiet again. Mr. Rochester seemed kinder now. He often walked with me in the garden. One day he said, "Jane, suppose someone had made a terrible mistake in the past. Do you think he could be forgiven?" I said, "Yes, if he was truly sorry." He smiled and looked at me in a way that made my heart beat fast. Soon after, I received a letter. My aunt, Mrs. Reed, was very ill. She wanted to see me. I had not seen her since she sent me away to Lowood. I went at once. When I entered her room, she looked old and weak. She turned her face away. "Why have you come?" she said coldly. "You hated me." I said, "No, Aunt. I came because you are sick." After a moment, she began to cry. She said, "Jane, I treated you badly. I was cruel. I cannot die in peace." I held her hand and said, "I forgive you." She closed her eyes and whispered, "You had a rich uncle, John Eyre. He wanted to adopt you, but I told him you were dead." I was shocked. My heart stopped for a moment. "You said I was dead?" I asked. She nodded weakly. "Yes, I was jealous. I did not want you to be happy." She died a few days later. I felt sad, but I also felt free. Now, I had no family left, no one to hate me. When I returned to Thornfield, I was happy to see the old house again. The evening was bright, and the garden smelled of flowers. Mrs. Fairfax smiled and said, "Welcome home, Miss Eyre." I asked about Mr. Rochester. She said he had been away but would return the next day. When he came back, he looked glad to see me. "You've been gone too long, Jane," he said warmly. "You are part of this place." His words made me smile. That evening, we walked by the orchard. The sky was pink and gold. He said softly, "Jane, suppose I were to marry. Would you be sorry?" I felt my face grow hot. I said, "No, sir. I would be happy if you were happy." He looked at me deeply and said, "You would not. You would forget me." The next day, he said he would soon marry Miss Ingram. My heart broke again. I tried to be calm, but I could not eat or sleep. That night I sat in my room and cried quietly. I said to myself, I must leave Thornfield. I cannot stay to see him marry another. But a few evenings later, something happened that changed everything. Mr. Rochester asked me to walk in the garden. It was sunset. He said, "Jane, I wanted to test you. I shall not marry Miss Ingram. I want to marry you." I could not believe my ears. "Me, sir? You are joking." He took my hands. "I am not joking. My heart is yours. Will you marry me?" I looked into his eyes. My heart was full of joy and fear. "Yes," I whispered. "I will." He smiled for the first time without sadness. "Then I am the happiest man alive," he said. We stood under the old tree, and the wind blew softly around us. That night, I prayed and thanked God. I could not sleep, for my heart was too full. The next days passed in happiness. We planned our wedding. Adele danced and sang when she heard the news. Mrs. Fairfax looked surprised but smiled kindly. I bought a simple dress, white and plain. I did not need jewels or silk. I only wanted to be with him. But sometimes, I still felt something strange in the house. I heard noises above my room at night. Once, my wedding veil was torn into 2 pieces. I asked Mr. Rochester about it. He said it was only a bad dream, but I knew it was real. A strange woman with wild eyes had entered my room. I saw her in the mirror, then she was gone. My heart was full of fear. On the morning of our wedding, the sky was clear. I walked beside Mr. Rochester to the small church. My hands were shaking, but I was happy. The priest began to speak the holy words. Then suddenly, a voice shouted, "Stop! This wedding cannot happen!" Everyone turned in shock. A man stepped forward. He said, "Mr. Rochester already has a wife. She lives at Thornfield Hall." My blood turned cold. I could not move. I looked at Mr. Rochester. His face was pale. "It is true," he said in a low voice. "Come, all of you. You shall see her." We all followed Mr. Rochester back to Thornfield Hall. The sky grew dark as we walked. My heart felt heavy, like a stone in my chest. He opened the same secret door I had seen before, behind the curtain. We went up a small stair to the top floor. The air was hot and strange. A woman stood inside the room. She had wild hair and fierce eyes. She made a terrible sound, half scream and half laugh. Her clothes were torn. She moved like a wild animal. When she saw Mr. Rochester, she tried to attack him. 2 servants caught her and held her back. "This is my wife," Mr. Rochester said sadly. Her name is Bertha Mason. She has lost her mind. I married her many years ago in Jamaica. I did not know her family had this illness. She has been mad for 10 years. I keep her here because I cannot send her away. I could not speak. I felt cold and empty. My dream was broken. He turned to me and said, "Jane, I love you. I was wrong to hide the truth, but I am not guilty of loving you. Stay with me. We cannot marry, but we can live together." I looked at him with tears in my eyes. "Sir," I said softly, "I love you, but I cannot stay. God will not let me live in sin. I must go." He caught my hand. "Don't leave me, Jane. You are my heart. My life is nothing without you." His voice shook with pain, but I knew I must be strong. "I cannot," I whispered. "I must leave tonight." When I reached my room, I cried until morning. Then I packed a small bag, took the little money I had, and left Thornfield before the sun rose. I walked far away, not knowing where I was going. I felt lost and weak. For 2 days, I had almost no food. I begged for bread, but people turned me away. I slept outside under the trees. At last, I came to a small village. There was a little house by the road. I knocked on the door and fainted. When I woke up, I was lying in a warm bed. A kind young woman stood beside me. Her name was Diana. Her sister Mary came soon after. They said their brother, St. John Rivers, had found me on the road and brought me home. For many days they cared for me. I was very weak and sick, but their kindness healed me. They asked my name. I said, "Jane Elliott." I did not want to tell them who I really was. Saint John was a quiet man, a clergyman. He was serious and cold, but good. When I was strong again, I wanted to work. Saint John found me a small school in a nearby village. I taught poor children reading and writing. The pay was little, but I was thankful. The work gave me peace. The children loved me, and I loved them. The Rivers family often invited me to dinner. Diana and Mary were cheerful and kind. I was happy with them. One evening, St. John came to me with a letter in his hand. "Jane," he said, "you gave a false name when you came here. But now I know the truth. Your name is Jane Eyre." I was afraid. "How do you know that?" I asked. He said calmly, "Your uncle, John Eyre, died in Madeira. He left you all his money, 20,000 pounds. I am your cousin. Our mothers were sisters." I was shocked and full of joy. "Then you are my family!" I cried. I felt my heart fill with love. After so many years, I finally had people who cared for me. I divided the money equally among us 4. I said, "You saved my life. Now we will share all things as a family." For a time, I was peaceful. I thought often of Mr. Rochester, but I did not write to him. I prayed for him and hoped he was safe. One winter evening, St. John said he planned to go to India as a missionary. He wanted me to go with him. "Jane," he said, "we can do God's work together. You will be my wife." I felt cold inside. "I will gladly help your work," I said, "but I cannot be your wife. I do not love you." He looked at me sternly. "Love is not needed," he said. "Duty is enough." But my heart was not made for duty alone. I could not marry a man I did not love. That night, as I sat by my window, I felt strange, as if I heard a voice calling my name far away. "Jane! Jane!" It was Mr. Rochester's voice. I stood up, trembling. I knew I must go to him. The next morning, I left my cousins. I took the coach to Thornfield. When I reached the place after many hours, I saw something terrible. Thornfield Hall was burned to the ground. Only black stones stood where the house once was. My heart stopped. I asked a man in the village what had happened. He said, "It was a fire. Mr. Rochester's mad wife set the house on fire and jumped to her death. Mr. Rochester tried to save everyone. He pulled the servants out, but the roof fell. He lost his sight and one hand. I could not speak. Tears filled my eyes. I asked where he was now. "He lives at a small house called Ferndean," the man said. "It is 10 miles away." I went there at once. It was evening when I arrived. The air was quiet, and smoke rose from the chimney. I saw Mr. Rochester sitting by the window. He looked older, his face pale and his hair gray at the edges. His eyes did not move. He was blind. I walked softly to him and said, "How are you, sir?" He turned his head. "Who is there?" he asked. I stepped closer. "It is I, Jane Eyre." He stood up quickly, his hands shaking. "Jane, is it really you? Have you come back to me?" I took his hands in mine. "Yes, sir. I have come home." He touched my face gently, as if to see with his hands. "Are you real? You will not leave me again?" "Never," I said. "I will stay forever." He cried softly and held me close. "You are my eyes now, my dear Jane." We were married quietly a few weeks later. No guests, no fine clothes, only love and peace. I was happy, truly happy. After 2 years, Mr. Rochester began to see a little light again. He could see the sky and my face in sunlight. When he looked at me, he smiled and said, "I see you, Jane. I see my life." We lived simply at Ferndean. Sometimes Adele came to visit from school. She grew into a gentle young lady. The Rivers family often wrote to me. My life was calm and full of love. I thanked God every day. I had walked through pain, hunger, and loneliness, but in the end, I found peace. I was no longer the poor, frightened girl at Gateshead. I was Jane Eyre, free, loved, and at last, home. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe to English Medium Stories. Stay with us for more classic stories in easy English.